feeling and glanced aside at him. Michael? When he spoke, his voice was exhausted, numb. The labor was complicated. She was cold and might have been getting sick with something. Her water did break back at the graveyard. I guess it makes it a lot harder on the baby. I just listened to him, feeling sicker. They had to go ahead and do a C-section, but they think there might be damage. She got hit in the stomach at one point, they think. They don't know if she'll be able to have children again. The baby? Silent. Michael? He stared at the infants and said, "The doctor says that if he lasts 36 hours, he might have a chance. But he's weakening. They're doing everything they can." Tears started at his eyes and rolled down his cheeks. There were complications. Complications. I tried to find something to say, but couldn't. Damn it. Tired frustration stirred my already unsteady belly. This shouldn't have happened. If I'd been faster or smarter, or made a better decision, maybe I could have stopped Charity from getting hurt. Or the baby. Put my hand on Michael's shoulder and squeezed tight, just trying to let him know that I was there for all the good I'd done. He took in a breath. The doctor thinks I beat her. That's how she got the bruises. He never said anything, but... "Oh, that's ridiculous," he said. "Stars and stones, Michael. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." His voice came out hard, bitter. He stared at his faint reflection in the glass. It might as well have been me, Harry. If I hadn't gotten myself involved, this demon wouldn't have gone after her. I heard his knuckles pop as he clenched his fists. It should have come after me. "You're right," I said. "Holy hell, Michael, you're right." He shot me a look. "What are you talking about?" I rubbed my hands together, trying to sort through the ideas flashing across my brain in neon lights. "It's a demon. This thing we're after, right? It's a demon's ghost." An orderly walking by, pushing a tray, gave me an odd look. I smiled at him, feeling rather manic. He hurried along. "Yes," Michael said. "Demons are tough, Michael. They're dangerous and they're scary, but they're really kind of clueless in a lot of ways." "How so?" "But they just don't get it about people. They understand things like lust and greed and the desire for power, but they just don't get things like sacrifice and love. It's alien to most of them. It doesn't make any sense at all." "I don't understand what you're driving at." "Remember what I said about how I knew the worst way to get to you would be through your family?" His frown darkened, but he nodded. "I know that because I'm human. I know what it's like to care about someone other than myself. Demons don't. Especially the thug-like demons who make pacts with two-bit sorcerers like Kravos. Even knowing that I thought the best way to get to you would be through someone close to you, I don't think a demon would have understood the context of that information. So what you're saying is that this demon would have no reason to go after my wife and child." "I'm saying it's inconsistent. If it was just a question of a demon's ghost going after the people who had killed it, then it should have just hammered on us until we all died and been done with it. I don't think it ever would have occurred to it to take a shot at someone that we care about, even if it did have my knowledge about it. There's got to be something else going on here." Michael's eyes widened a bit. "The nightmare is a cat's paw," he said. "Someone else is using it to hit at us." "Someone who can cast those barbed wire torment spells," I said. "And we've been chasing around after the tool instead of going after the hand that's wielding it." "Blood of God," Michael swore. It was about the second most powerful oath he used. Who could it be? I shook my head. "I don't know. Someone who has us both in common, I guess. How many enemies do we share?" He wiped his eyes on the sleeves, expression intent. "I'm not sure. I've made enemies with pretty much every creature in the country." "Ditto," I said morosely. Even some of the other wizards wouldn't mind seeing me fall down a few flights of stairs. Not knowing our attacker's identity doesn't bother me as much as something else, though. What's that? Why he hasn't taken us out already? They want to hurt us first. Vengeance. His brow beetled. Could your godmother be behind this? I shook my head. I don't think so. She's a fairy. They aren't usually this methodical or organized. And they aren't impatient either. This thing's been active every night, like it couldn't wait to get going. Michael looked at me for a moment, then he said, Harry, you know that I don't think it's my place to judge another person. I could hear a butt coming. He nodded. But how did you get mixed up with the likes of that fairy? She's bad, Harry. Some of them are merely alien, but that one is malevolent. She enjoys causing pain. Yeah, I said. I didn't exactly pick her. Who did? I shrugged. My mother, I think. She was the one with power. My father wasn't a wizard, wasn't into their world. I don't understand why she would do that to her child. Something inside me broke with a little snapping sensation, and I felt tears at my eyes. I scowled. They were child's tears, to go with a child's pain. I don't know, I said. I know that she was mixed up with some bad people, bad beings, whatever. Maybe Leah was one of her allies. Leah. It's short for Lianxi, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know her real name. She takes blood from mortals and gives them inspiration in return. Artists and poets and things. That's how she amassed most of her power. Michael nodded. I've heard of her. This bargain you had with her, what is it? I shook my head. It isn't important. Something shifted in Michael. Became harder, more resolute. It's important to me, Harry. Tell me. I stared at the babies for a minute before I said, I was a kid. Things fell out with my old teacher, Justin. He sent a demon to kill me, and I went on the run. I made a bargain with you. Enough power to defeat Justin in exchange for my service to her, my loyalty. And you broke faith with her. More or less, I shook my head. She's never pushed it before now, but I've been careful to stay out of her way. She doesn't usually get this involved with mortal business. Michael moved his hand to Amarakis' empty scabbard. She did take the sword, though. I winced. Yeah, I guess that was my fault. If I hadn't tried to use it to weasel out of the deal. You couldn't have known, Michael said. I should have, I said. It isn't as though it's a tough one to figure out. Michael shrugged, though his expression was less casual than a gesture. What's done is done. But I don't know how much help to you I can be without a sword. We'll get it back, I said. Leah can't help herself. She makes deals. We'll figure out a way to get it back from her. But will we do it in time? Michael said. He shook his head, grim. A sword won't stay in her hands forever. The Lord won't allow that. But it may be my time to wield it is past. What are you talking about? I asked. Perhaps it was a sign. Perhaps that I am no longer worthy to serve him in this way. Or that the burden of it has passed on to someone else. He grimaced, staring at the glass, the infants. My family here. Perhaps this time they had a full-time father. Oh, great. All I needed now was a crisis of faith and a bad case of career doubt from the fist of God. I needed Michael. I needed someone to watch my back. Someone who was used to dealing with the supernatural. Sword or no sword, he had a steady head. His faith had a subtle power of its own. He could be the difference between me getting killed and defeating whoever was out there. Besides, he had wheels. Let's get going. Time's a-wasting. He frowned. I can't. I'm needed here. Michael, look. Is someone with your kids at home? Yes. I called Charity's sister last night. She went over. Father Fordhill is going to get some sleep and then stay on. Is there anything more you can do for Charity here? He shook his head. Only pray. She's resting now, and her mother is on the way here. Okay, then. We've got work to do. You expect me to leave them again? No, not leave them. but we need to find the person behind the nightmare and take care of them. Harry, what are we gonna do? Kill someone? If we have to. Hell's bells, Michael. They might have murdered your son. His face hardened, and I knew then that I had him. That he'd follow me into hell to get at whoever had hurt his wife and child. I had him all right, and I hated myself for it. Way to go, Harry. Jerk those heartstrings like a fucking puppeteer. I held up the book. I think I've got a line on the nightmare's name. I'll bet you anything that Kravos recorded it in his Book of Shadows here. If I'm right, I might be able to use it to make contact with the nightmare and then trace his leash back to whoever's holding it. Michael stared at the glass, at the kids beyond it. I need you to drive me home. From my lab, I might be able to sort out what's going on before things get any more out of hand. Then we go handle it. He didn't say anything. Michael. All right, he said, voice quiet. Let's go. Chapter 23. Back in my lab, it felt a little creepy to be working by candlelight. Intellectually, I knew that it was still full daylight outside, but last night had brought out the instinctive fear of the dark. And it's part of being human. I had been wounded. Everything, every shadow, every small sound made me twitch and jerk. Look aside. Steady, Harry, I told myself. You have time before sundown. Just relax and get it over with. Good advice. Michael and I had driven around most of the morning, collecting what I would need for the spell. I had read through Kravos' journal while Michael drove. Sick stuff. He'd been careful about listing out every step of his rituals, complete with notes on the physical ecstasy he'd experienced during the killings. 9 in all. Most of them had been women or children he'd killed with a cruelly carved knife. He'd roped a bunch of young people into his fold with drugs and blackmail, and then thrown orgies where he'd either participate or else channel the energy raised by all that lust into his magic. That seemed to be standard operating procedure for guys like Kravos. Win-win situation. A thorough man. Thorough in his efforts to kill and corrupt lives to acquire more power. Thorough in the documentation of his sick pleasures, and thorough in the listing of his efforts to secure a familiar demon by the name of Azothrogal. The name had been carefully written, each syllable marked for specific emphasis. Magic is a lot like language. It's all about stringing things together, linking one thing with another, one idea with another. After you establish links, then you pour power into them and make something happen. That's what we call thaumaturgy in the business, creating links between small things and big things. Then you make something happen on a small scale, and it happens on a large scale, too. Voodoo dolls are a typical example of that one. But simulacra, like a voodoo doll, aren't the only way to create links. A wizard can use fingernail clippings, or hair, or blood, if it's fresh enough, or just about any other part of the body to create a link back to the original being. Or you can use its name, or maybe I should say its name. Names have power. Everyone's name says something about them, whether they're aware of it or not. A wizard can use that name to forge a link to someone. It's difficult with people. People's self-concepts are always changing, evolving, so even if you get someone to tell you their full name, if you try to establish the link when they're in a radically different mood, or after some life-changing event that alters the way they see themselves, it might not work. A wizard can get the person's name only from their own lips, but if he doesn't use it fairly quickly, it's likely to get stale. Demons, however, are a different matter. Demons aren't people. They don't have the problem of having a soul. They don't worry about silly things like good and evil or right and wrong. Demons are. If a demon is going to be inclined to eat your face, it's going to eat your face then and now, and 1,000 years from now. It's almost comforting in a way, and it makes them vulnerable. Once you know a demon's name, you can get to it whenever you want to. I had Azothrogal's name, even though it was a ghost now instead of a demon. It ought to respond to the memory of its name, if nothing else. Time to get to it. 5 white candles surrounded my summoning circle, the points of an invisible pentacle. White for protection. And because they're the cheapest color at Walmart. Hey, being a wizard doesn't make money grow on trees. Beneath each candle was an object of someone the nightmare had touched. My shield bracelet was there. Michael had given me his wedding ring and Charity. I'd gone by the station and grabbed the hand-lettered nameplate Murphy had kept stubbornly on her office door until the publicity last year had driven the municipal politicians into getting her a real one. It lay on the floor beside them. A visit to a grateful Malone household had turned up Mickey's retirement watch. It completed the circle between the last pair of candles. I drew in a breath and checked my props. You don't need all the candles and knives and whatnot to work magic, but they help. They make it easier to focus. And in my weakened condition, I needed all the help I could get. So I lit the incense and paced around the outside of the summoning circle, leaving myself enough room to work with inside the circle of incense and outside the circle of copper. I put out a little willpower as I did, just enough to close the circle, and felt the energy levels rise as random magic coalesced. "Harry," Michael called down from the room above. "Are you finished?" I suppressed a flash of irritation. "Just getting started. 45 minutes until sundown," he said. I couldn't keep the annoyance out of my voice. "Gee, thanks. No pressure, Michael." "Can you do it or not, Harry? Father Forthill is staying at my house with the children. If we can't stop this thing now, I've got to get back to Charity." "I sure as hell can't do it with you breathing down my neck. Hell's bells, Michael. Get out of the way and let me work." He growled something to himself about patience or turning the other cheek or something. I heard his feet on the floor above as they retreated from the door leading down to my lab. Michael didn't come down into the lab with me because the whole concept of using magic without the Almighty behind it didn't sit well with him. Regardless of what we've been through together, he could tolerate it, but not approve of it. I got back to work, closing my eyes and forcing myself to clear my thoughts, to focus on the task at hand. I started to draw my concentration toward the copper circle. The incense smoke tickled at my senses and swirled about inside the perimeter of the outside circle, not leaving it. The energy grew slowly as I concentrated, and I picked up the knife in my right hand and a handful of water from a bowl on my left. Now for the 3 steps. "Enemy, mine enemy," I spoke, slipping power into the words. "I seek you." I passed the knife over the copper circle straight down. I couldn't see it without opening my sight, but could feel the silent tension as I cut a slit between the mortal world and the never-never. "Enemy, mine enemy," I spoke again. "I search for you. Show me your face." I cast the water up over the circle, where the energy of the spell atomized it into a fine, drifting mist filled with rainbows from the surrounding candle, shifting shapes and colors. And now for the hard part. "Azathrogal," I shouted. "Azathrogal! Azathrogal! Operate!" I used the knife to cut my finger and smeared blood onto the edge of the copper circle. Power surged out of me into the circle, through the rent in the fabric of reality, and as it did, the circle sprang up like a wall around the band of copper on the floor. I felt the cut as an acute, vicious pain, enough to make me blink tears out of my eyes as the power quested out, fueled by the energy of the circle, guided by the articles spread around it. The spell quested about in the never-never, like a blind tentacle of the Kraken scouring the deck, looking for some hapless soul to grab. It shouldn't have happened like that. It should have zipped to the nightmare like a lariat and brought it reeling in. I reached out and put more power into the spell, picturing the things that I had been fighting, the results of its work, trying to give the spell more guidance. It wasn't until I hit upon the sense of the nightmare, for lack of a better word, the terror that it had inspired, that the spell latched on to something. There was a moment of startled stillness, then a wild, bucking energy, a resistance that made my heart pound in my chest. The cut in my finger burned as though someone had poured salt over it. "Apparet!" I shouted, forcing my will into my voice, reeling back in on the spell.